Radio Grand Lac, à Aix-les-Bains et autour du lac du Bourget, votre radio.
Your English Weekly. Your English Weekly. La chronique 100% en anglais de Radio Grand Lac avec Sinead.
Bonjour à tous, encore une émission 100% anglais aujourd'hui, sponsorée par Your English Workshop. Donc, merci de rester avec nous sur 92.1. So this is Your English Weekly on Radio Grand Lac 92.1. Tune in every Tuesday from 12:30 to 1:45. Your English Workshop sponsors Your English Weekly. Your English Workshop is a training center for English lessons for adults and children in aix-les-bains and the Ravois. Visit their website for more information. So hello and welcome to Your English Weekly. I'm Sinead, your host. Your English Weekly stimulates English speaking in aix-les-bains, La Ravois and around the lake. So today we're going to be talking to a wonderful woman who's called Marilyn, who's on our program. But Marilyn, before we start, do you want to say a little hello?
Oh, I'd love to, yes. Well, it's lovely to be back.
Yes, that's
with
right.
you and in France.
Exactly, because Marilyn was off globe hopping a little bit here and there and found herself off in Australia. But Marilyn, before we start, I want to see if you can tell us what my little expression of the week is. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know it. Mm-hmm. So the expression this week is, we had a whale of a time.
I know that one.
Do you?
Oh, it's something very big, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So I think maybe you had a whale of a time where you were staying in Australia.
Absolutely, yes.
So today, Marilyn, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay. Marilyn Bird, English, living in aix-les-bains, and English teacher too.
Yes, you're an English teacher too, here with us. Fantastic. So Marilyn, tell us a little bit. I know you were in Australia and you had one of the most amazing times in your life, apparently.
Yes, never forget it.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, we can't talk about your whole experience in Australia, but we're going to be doing 2 or 3 different shows over the year. Mm-hmm. And today we're going to start with our first show, which will be about the whales, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So tell us about your remarkable experience with the sea life. Whereabouts in Australia was it?
So I've done a huge trip, a circuit around Australia from Brisbane to Sydney, from Sydney to Cairns, and from Cairns back to Brisbane. And one of our first outings, and number 1 on my bucket list, of course, was to go and see the whales in the sea, living naturally in the sea.
Yeah.
And so the best place to do this from Brisbane is to Moreton Island. And you take a boat from Tangaloona Bay, which is 50 kilometres from Brisbane. Mm-hmm.
So what sea life did you see out there?
Oh, well, it's a special trip that they actually announce that you go and see whales.
Okay.
And the people that take you out, they're experts, obviously, so they know where the whales are to be found. But it's an incredible trip because Tangaloona Bay sounds very exotic, but you do actually go down the whole of the docks from Brisbane right out into the sea. So you've got the all-industrial companies and their huge silos. Just the going down towards the sea is very impressive along the docks.
Okay, so it's not something you expected when you were going to go and visit there?
Not at all, no.
Okay. And tell us, because we all know that all our whales and all our sea life has to be really protected today. Do they protect their sea life?
I think whaling, what they call whaling, is no longer allowed in the world.
Thank goodness.
I think that a lot, it is in decreasing. I think there are only about three countries that are allowed to do it.
Okay.
And this is great. This is in discussion at the moment. We're not sure where that's going to go, but we want to stop it as well.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us, you went out to the famous island, to the sanctuary, and your captain, he brought you out there. What were you expecting? What did you see? Tell us a little bit about this fantastic moment.
We went out on a huge boat, and it's obviously for tourists. It's all laid on for tourists, and they have to come up to certain standards, life jackets, etc. It's a huge boat that takes in about 30, 40 people. Mm-hmm. And you go out for about 2 hours out into the sea, after the docks, out into the sea. And you think, yeah, whales, might see some, might not. But they actually ensure that you see the whales. And we did.
Okay.
Of course, when you think, yeah, let's put it on, let's see them.
Let's see them.
You do actually see them. They know where they are and they know we're going to find them.
And they must know them a little bit as well, I presume, because whales are quite intelligent, if I'm not mistaken.
They do a commentary. They tell you all about whales when you're watching them, when you see them. And we had them onto the right of the boat, or should I say left, and to the port, left and starboard, port and starboard. But they do actually, they're quite comfortable in our presence with boats on the water. And there were this couple communicating with themselves from left to right, and they weren't worried about us at all. So, sometimes they have their heads popping out and they do the slapping, the lobtailing.
Okay, so tell us a little bit of the slapping, the lobtailing.
Yeah.
I learned loads of little expressions.
Yeah.
Spying, I heard about the spying.
Yeah, spy hopping, yes.
So what is all this?
Well, it's all the different language they use because whales are studied now by the scientists, and of course they study how they communicate with each other. So you've got sky hopping that occurs when a whale surfaces partly above the water, just pops its head out.
Is it to come and see who's there?
It's maybe to spy on us.
It might be.
It could be.
Yeah.
They're spying on something anyway.
And so this action of popping its head out is called spy hopping.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a new word.
Yeah.
So listeners, I just learnt that now. I didn't know I never heard this expression before.
There you go. Well, there are other expressions. There's lobtailing.
Okay, so tell us about this.
So the lobtailing is when they slap their lateral fins on the top of the water.
Okay.
And it makes quite a noise. You can hear them from quite a way away. But we weren't that far away. We were like 500 metres from them.
No.
So it's very, very clear to see. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's lobtailing. And then there's breaching.
What's this?
Breaching is when they actually lunge themselves out of the water.
Okay, lunge. Now explain to our listeners what that means,
they
lunging.
Jump. They throw themselves up.
Yeah.
They're about 40% out of the water.
Okay.
And then they come back down and slap the surface, and you can see their tails coming up. So that's why it's called breaching, because you can see the tails.
Okay. And does the captain give you all this explanation on the way and explain to you all these different terms that they use?
Yeah, absolutely. They know all about them. They know where to find them. They know how they live. Yes, they absolutely do. They
studied them, I presume,
they've studied them, but
over
they
the
put
years.
it all on for the tourists. But it's, for the normal, everyday person, it's good to know. It's stuff you don't learn every day. So.
And we don't learn it in the books until we've really seen it, do we?
No.
And this is what's nice. So the captain explains all of these different things. I'm sure the captain know these whales and nearly know their names, or they know them.
Probably. They recognise them by their fins, their back fins, and they know that that's a sign. It's a bit like, different cows, cats, they all have their different marks, and they recognise them like that. So they've probably given them names, yeah.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, all this is fantastic. So tell us, aren't these whales endangered in this area where they are?
Not at all.
Do they have a problem with poachers or people like this?
No.
Do they call them poaching or not?
Whalers, I think they
whalers.
call them.
Okay.
And I suppose when it's illegal, it would be called poaching. No longer. And someone who has done a great deal for, first of all, he was called the crocodile hunter, Steve Irwin, but he has done a lot to help the whaling, to stop whaling. He had a boat that was called a sea surface, I think, Sea Shepherd.
Ah, yes.
And he's done a lot towards stopping the whaling, but it is actually illegal now and only legal in 3 or 4 countries, Norway, Sweden.
Okay, well, that's fantastic, because it is really good progress, because they were on the list of endangered species that were disappearing very quickly.
They were. They went down. They went to less than a third of what they were before.
Yeah, in the 80s, I know that we did a big campaign about this and what have you. Yeah. Okay, and so what advice would you give to people to go out? Do you think it's really worth going out and visiting these whales? And tell us a little bit, would you suggest that if people go to Australia, that they is it all over Australia you can do these trips, or is it in special zones?
No, I think you can do this sort of trip everywhere. I'd say get to Australia after the 27-hour trip to get there.
27
it's quite
hours.
tiring, but yeah, go for it. And go also for the visit onto Moreton Island itself, because he dropped us off onto Moreton Island.
Okay, so tell us about Moreton Island.
That is where he dropped us off. It's an island where you can go and stay for the weekend. It is a reserve, a natural reserve for the dolphins, and it's a privately owned island actually, and people actually go there. We could have stayed later, but we had a lot in our day to do already. You can stay, and they come in to feed in the evenings, and you can actually walk in the water and see the dolphins coming up, feeding from you.
Oh, really? So they really are used to humans.
But they're living free. It's a sanctuary, but they're living free. So they live out in the sea, and they just come in because they know they're going to be fed, basically, and it's absolutely fabulous to see. Of course, I did some feeding of the pelicans and all the other the seabirds as well.
And did you see any tortoises?
We saw tortoises,
yeah,
yes,
they're
of
my
course.
favourite. They're my favourite animal.
They're gorgeous, they're peaceful. But I saw a lot more on the coral reef. When I went diving on the coral reef.
Yeah, but we said we would keep this story of the coral reef, which is number one for you.
All right,
I know it's number one for you.
I'll come back for the coral reef.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to do that in January. That's
right.
one that we'll have to talk about for the coral reef. But it was great, though, Marilyn, to listen to all of this, because it's nice to know that we can actually... what I think is amazing is that the animals love us, and we don't respect them nearly as much as they respect us in some terms.
I think we've come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've come a long way in that score, and I think people love animals more and more. The more we understand them,
that's it as well. Yes, we weren't always taught.
Absolutely,
we weren't always taught how to behave with them. Yeah. So anyway, Marilyn, that was great talking about all these whales and
I could go on for hours.
I'm sure you could. Just a quick question before the end: how long did you spend whale watching?
On the water in the boat. It took us like 2 hours to get out into the sea, and then he dropped us off on Moreton Island. So we stayed a couple of hours on Moreton, then another 2 hours back. So it's a day trip.
It's a day trip.
It's a whole day trip.
Okay, so that's good. It's not like 2 days where you have to go out in the sea to see them. So they're quite close to the shore, really.
Yeah, it is quite close to the shore.
2 hours from the shore. It's not that far.
No.
Okay, so that's... So anyway, before we finish, because believe it or not, we've got another 2 minutes, Marilyn, before we finish. I know the time goes very, very quickly. So just before we finish, back to our expression, to have a whale of a time, which means, as I said earlier, you had a whale of a time going out to visit those whales, which means to have a very fun and exciting time, to have something that is big. It's something that's big. So it's a big way, it's a way of saying big.
Like the whales. Big
like the whales, exactly. So a whale of a time. So anyway, thank you so much, Marilyn, for coming today and talking about the whales. It's true, it does go too quickly.
It's too fast.
It is too fast. But anyway, that's all from us today. If you wish to listen to this podcast again, you're very welcome to listen to it on YouTube. So don't hesitate to find us also on our Facebook page with the expression of the week. I wish you all a wonderful week, and I'll be back with another guest next week. So don't forget to tune in to 92.1 on the Tuesday from 12:30 to 1:15. So that's all I'm going to say today. And Marilyn, thank you again for coming.
It's my pleasure.
And we'll be back talking to you about your blog. So just before we leave, do you want to tell me a little bit about, tell our listeners where they can find your blog about Australia?
Okay, it's going to be called Land Down Under, as we call Australia in English. And it's not quite ready yet, but it'll be ready in the next couple of weeks. And it'll be all about the 20-day trip in Australia.
Oh, you were a lucky lady. Well, bye to you.
Bye-bye.
From us at you. Thanks again.